This is the one about the ghosts of the historic Key West Cemetery. The cemetery was established in 1847 after a terrible hurricane in 1846. The reason that the new cemetery needed to be established was because the old cemetery was located on the beach. So when the very strong hurricane hit Key West, it disinterred all of the bodies and they ended up all over the island, including in trees. So the new cemetery was placed on high ground, and in Key West, that means 16 feet above sea level. There are roughly 100,000 souls buried in the cemetery, and it is still an active cemetery with about 100 interments every year. As you can see from the photos I'm showing, there are in-ground graves, as well as very modern vaults, these beautiful historic brick vaults, statues adorned with beads, a conch shell marker. I don't know that you can get too much more Key West than that. And we have our very famous funny headstones, which include "I told you I was sick" and "I'm just resting my eyes," among others. And for all the humor and character that we have in our cemetery, this is the final resting place for 100,000 souls, and it is said that many still roam the grounds. One of the most famous and most frequently encountered spirits is of a Bahamian woman. It's said that she considers herself something of a guardian of the cemetery. And the reason for this is that she most often appears when people are being disrespectful of the graves. She has an angry look on her face, and sometimes she will even chastise the offender. So word to the wise, be careful not to sit or stand on any graves when you visit. Many other guests have experienced other strange occurrences like orbs, shadows, and even disembodied voices. Curses are real, you know. Just ask Robert Albury and Christopher Darville. Okay, so full disclosure, this is not actually a photo of these two men. I actually think that this tale has been told with names changed. So real photos of the people involved are not available, but I found some great placeholders. Okay, back to the tale. So Christopher and Robert are both just making a life for themselves on the island. And it turns out they both fall in love with the same woman, Miss Louisa Thomas. One evening, Christopher walks over to Louisa's house to visit with her, and he finds none other than Robert sitting on Louisa's front porch. They get into a little scuffle, and Robert is thrown from the front porch. He hits his head on a rock and falls unconscious. Louisa's family did take him for medical attention, but he was in and out of consciousness, and there was nothing that could be done. However, one of the last things he said was, "Some things may go unpunished, but this is not one. Revenge that does not come in life will come in death, and both you and your family will suffer for the injustice that you have caused." He died later that evening and was buried in the cemetery. Ultimately, it was ruled accidental and Christopher was let off the hook. And it said that Louisa ended up leaving Key West because her heart was broken. Christopher went on to marry, and he had a beautiful family, including children and grandchildren. Then one day, as has been known to happen, a hurricane passed through Key West. And after the storm passed, Christopher's adult granddaughter and her beloved just strolling through the cemetery. It's said that one minute Elizabeth, his granddaughter, was there, and then the next minute she wasn't. They searched, and eventually 3 days passed and they found Elizabeth's body. The hurricane had washed away portions of the limestone, weakening one of the tombs, and so when she walked over it, she was basically sucked into the ground. It was an extremely narrow opening, and that's why rescuers were not able to even detect the hole when they were searching initially. Christopher was called to the cemetery to identify his granddaughter's body, and he was horrified to discover that it was Robert Albury's grave, with his promise of revenge so many years ago finally coming to pass. But Robert wasn't quite done. Christopher and 2 other members of the search team developed cholera after being exposed to wet grave sites, and they too died in just a matter of days. I have never personally had a spooky experience, but my husband has. His spooky experiences all happened here at the Otto family plot. If you're familiar with Robert the Doll, then you probably recognize the name Otto. Robert Jean Otto, who is buried in the family plot, was the little boy who was originally gifted Robert the Doll. Anyway, whenever we walk by this plot, my husband always gets the chills. He says it's just like a weird energetic feeling in his body, and it's every single time we walk by or into this plot. Also, a couple of years back, we did do our annual Halloween walk around the island, and we were in the cemetery for that portion of our walk, and some other people were with us, and I was with them, and my husband was doing the live, and so he walked away, and he said he experienced this really strange thing where he felt he went into another dimension for a few minutes. He was looking all around. He was completely by himself in the cemetery, even though he should have been able to look and see us from where he was standing. And you may have guessed it, he was standing right in front of the Otto family plot. Eventually, he came back to this dimension. We actually asked our friend Southernmost Ted, who's one of the ghost tour guides who's been doing it forever on the island, about this alternate dimension experience and if anyone else has ever had an experience like that to his knowledge. And he said, yes, he is aware of other people who have felt as though they went into another dimension for a period of time. And he did tell us a few of those stories. And in addition to all of this, last year we had Wayne Garcia, who is a multi-generation conch, on our podcast. He's an incredible storyteller. And I asked him if he had had any paranormal experiences. And he shared several that were amazing. There's one about a white German shepherd that really is just incredible. So I'm going to do another video and I will share that clip from our podcast so you guys can experience it as well. With 100,000 souls all in one small area, I don't think anyone is surprised to know that there are paranormal experiences happening at the Key West Cemetery quite often. So I'm curious, have you ever had a paranormal experience at the Key West Cemetery? And if you have, please send me a DM or comment if you're comfortable, because I'm so curious to hear other people's experiences. Now, if you love this video and you want to hear more about Key West's haunted history, be sure to follow because I have lots more in store for you this month.